Welcome to Talk of the Bay. I'm Christine Barrington. Well, the cliche of the starving artist is an archetype that is unfortunately all too easily accepted in this country. A stereotype iterated in almost every medium, including books, movies, television, and theater. It's almost expected that artists are amongst those who struggle until they catch their so-called big break. Well, Santa Cruz has more artists per capita than most towns or cities in the country. It is also listed as the second most unaffordable place to live in the country. Put those two facts together and do the math. Well, longtime mixed media artist Sarah Friedlander has witnessed this quotient firsthand and, along with other artists in the community, set her mind to creating a support system to help artists transcend, struggle, and thrive. In an op-ed for Lookout magazine last month, she boldly put forward that the Santa Cruz arts community needs a protective assistance and relief fund if it is to survive. It's a sobering statement, and for a number of years now, Sarah has put action behind these words to help create the Santa Cruz Artists Assistance and Relief Fund, otherwise known as SCARF. Sarah Friedlander is in the studio with me tonight, along with two other artist collaborators who are working hard with others in the arts community to enrich this fund and the lives of the accomplished creators who grace this region with their gifts. Melissa Kreisa is an artist who stepped forward to fill a gaping hole in the downtown art scene by opening a 4,600 square foot gallery near the Museum of Art and History on Front Street. And she did it during the pandemic, no less. On top of invigorating the local art scene with this exhibition space called Curated by the Sea, Melissa has taken on leadership of the SCARF Fund and this summer hosted a fundraising art wall to benefit the fund, which featured the works of 35 prominent local artists, including Sarah Friedlander's, as well as our next guest, Rose Sellery. Rose's artistry ranges across disciplines from sculpture and conceptual garments to photo montage. She's the co-director of Pivot, the Art of Fashion. She's curated art exhibits and fashion events around California and has exhibited artwork nationally and internationally. She was one of the driving forces between Fashion Art Santa Cruz for 9 years, and she will not only add her voice to our understanding of the importance of the SCARF Fund, she also has an exhibition opening soon at Curated by the Sea. Well, Sarah, Melissa, Rose, thank you to Talk of the Bay. Thanks for coming here.
Thank you for having us. It's so nice to be here.
It's like a party. Well, we are going to talk about this really important fund and why the artists of this region truly matter. And so, Sarah, I'd like to start with you. There's a history behind the SCARF Fund. Would you share with our listeners a little bit about its inspiration and how it has unfolded over the years?
Sure. In about 2008, Dee Hooker and I decided to give a platform to as many artists as we could to show their work. And we called it Art for Art because we wanted some of the profit to go to the art community. And we wound up creating a SCARF wall, although at that point it was just a donations wall with small pieces of work donated by different artists. And then that money and a percentage of the money that the artists earned by selling their art would go to something in the community, and we decided that it could go to helping build the Tannery Arts Center. And so that was the first year it happened. And then after that, we thought, okay, let's do yet another big art exhibition. And when we did that one, we started doing research to try to figure out what the artists needed the most. And we started thinking about how artists don't have health insurance. They don't have, often because of the lack of funds that they have, they don't have a lot of access, especially in a crisis. And we found that there was a fund in California, now it's across the country, for people who are working in crafts, but not for people who are working in art. And they could apply to that if they were a craftsperson, but there was nothing for artists. And we thought, okay, let's try to create an artist relief fund for Santa Cruz artists who are either going through anything from fires to theft to illness to whatever. And we did yet another Art for Art show, and then we started this fund, and the community was so supportive. And we raised thousands of dollars, and over the last, it's been obviously 12 years, 13, 14 years, we've been able to give grants to our fellow artists who are either facing a surgery or facing some catastrophe of some sort where they need something just to tide them over when they've faced these, unexpected incidents. So that's been going on. And when Melissa opened her gallery and heard about this, she said, let's keep this going. And we said, we'd love to. And having a gallery that could constantly be raising funds for this fund just seemed like the perfect situation. And Melissa's been amazingly generous in getting this started. And then we just had
You just had the art wall, so we're going to pivot to you in a second, Melissa, but I visited the gallery last Friday. There were lots of people there, great energy, incredible artwork, and there was this beautiful wall with all these different works of art with little boxes underneath them, and people bought like tickets for $5, right? And they put all their little tickets into the pieces of art that they liked. And then on the second, you had the drawing, and somebody got that work of art, and you've raised a certain amount of money doing that, and it's fun, it's energizing. So Melissa, I just want to pivot to you. This space that you created, it's called Curated by the Sea, and it in and of itself is quite a story. And so it's just amazing to me the activism that's here in this room. So I want to pivot to you. Tell us a little bit about how this gallery space downtown came about.
Well, I had moved here from, I'd lived over the hill for 12 years and was active in the art scene over there, working in galleries, and then Anna Mark's Art Party, which was a big extravaganza for 2 years. And so when I was working to help coordinate the artists, I saw that there were so many artists coming from Santa Cruz, just 3 spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets, right? And so we left Santa Clara, moved to Europe for 3 years, and came back and settled in Santa Cruz. And I was so excited because I knew there was this amazing group of talent over here. And started looking around. I wanted to get connected, and it was just really limited in the amount of exhibition space or shows that were happening. And there were some great shows happening, but there was not for what you're saying, artists per capita. So I met this woman who had a lot of energy for starting a gallery, and I had a lot of energy for starting a gallery. So we jumped in together in Capitola and started a little gallery space right downtown. And that was August of 2019. And so we started the ball rolling. Things were going well. We started working with artists that I'd known from previous shows, and then COVID hit. And she decided she wanted to back away, step away from that. And I was more invigorated than ever. I thought, we need this now. I need this now. And so I started looking around town for empty storefronts, because that's when everything shut down. Right away, if you remember, everyone just locked the doors and walked away from all their businesses, downtown Santa Cruz, downtown Capitola. And so I just started looking around town for places that I could hang art in windows, just to kind of get people out for walks and keep nourishing the environment and the community with the art. And I sent out 12 letters around town for places that might be available, commercial spaces, and only one answered, and it was for the space that I'm in. And it was Lee Slaff, who's been the art angel for Curated, and she was an arts advocate herself and former Arts Council president. And she's like, sure, you can have the windows, you can have the whole space. And I was like, the whole space? It's 4,600 square feet. And so I was like, okay. And we just started, and we started slowly. And right away, people started coming in. I mean, it was still when everyone was wearing masks and being really cautious about COVID, but people would kind of creep in and just to be in the environment with the art. And so that's just 1 month at a time. And then Downtown Association or Economic Development for Santa Cruz put out the Downtown Pops grant for to help with rental support for businesses. And so I was able to get that for a year, which was amazing. So last year was helped pay the rent. And then this year we're going to just go back to, we set up a profit share model, Lee and I, so that I didn't have to go at personal risk to do this, because it's a big risk. And so just going to try to keep moving forward.
Wow, I love this image where everybody's kind of contracting and pulling away, and understandably kind of making their world smaller to deal with the pandemic. You just kind of supernovaed, like.
Thank you. That is a nice image.
Yeah, let's have art, downtown. And speaking for myself, I mean, I've lived in this area on and off since I was 15, which means a long time, and love First Fridays, but it was usually kind of wandering through other shops with some art on the wall. And there was nowhere where there was this concentration that one experiences when you go to Curated by the Sea.
That
and
is a high honor.
Yeah, and I brought my husband with me, and he was so blown away. We just loved all the art, and as he was going to bed, he was like, "This was the best night and for such a long time." And I'm like, "I know." So we were talking earlier before we went on air about how much when an artist is creating a work, right, they are paying attention. They're interacting with their inner vision, with their materials. They're pouring that like onto their canvas or into their sculpture or into that piece of ceramic they're throwing. And when you get to look at this final product, there is so much like physical, emotional, and I'm going to say spiritual energy infused into that work. And so actually want to go to our next guest, Rose. You're all the artists curated by the Sea, they're incredible artists, and you work in a really unusual way. You're going to have an exhibition soon at Curated by the Sea, and but you're also here to talk about the Scarf Fund. And so I want to invite you in to share with us what connects you with Scarf.
I go back to some of the early days for art exhibitions and participated in a few of those. What Sarah and Dee created was truly amazing, and I'm so happy it's continued. I know they've helped a number of people through the years, and I've heard about several that have been supported or who are on the list to receive funds. And it's true, everyone here knows how difficult it is to survive in Santa Cruz County unless you're high up in a tech job somewhere. Most people are struggling to make ends meet, and artists often end up giving up their artwork because they can't afford to maintain it. And that's a real loss for our community, for our children, for all the world. If we're not making art, we're losing something. If we're not making music, if we're not making sculpture or paintings, if we're not writing, if we can't afford to do some of those things that enrich our souls, it's a loss for everyone. So the fact that they have helped people keep going has made a huge difference for our community. We need more help.
We need more help for our artists. And in case you've just tuned in and are wondering what we're talking about, this is KSQD Santa Cruz at 90.7 FM. I'm Christine Barrington with Talk of the Bay. And our topic tonight explores the Santa Cruz Artists Assistance and Relief Fund, known as SCARF, why it's needed, its history, and how our local community can support the artists in our community who make our region rich with culture. And my guests are artists and organizers, Sarah Friedlander, Rose Sellery, and Melissa Kreisa. And so you were speaking, there's this question like, are artists valuable? And I read there was this study done in 2003 where they interviewed people and they found that people valued art. Like 97% of the people surveyed valued art, but only like 25% valued the artists. A really shocking statistic, wow. Right? And so it's like, we think art's valuable, but we're not putting together these real living, breathing human beings that to create art at the level that when you interact with it, it hits you. It like there's a visceral response to a great work of art, and there's a reason for that, and that's because there's a tremendous amount of time, attention, craft, practice, learning. Like Sarah, listening to your journey through art just blew me away. And there was a drawing book, Edwards,
Writing on the Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards.
By Betty Edwards, and I'm like, because I read your story and listened to our previous interview on KSQD, which will be linked to the show because it's a really great interview talking about Sarah's history with art. It's like, to learn how to draw properly is this journey into a world where we're really paying careful attention to the world around us versus being in this spinning cerebral space, which I think is kind of tearing our world apart. All the talk shows, sorry, this is a talk show, but after you listen, just run on down tomorrow to Curated by the Sea. But if we were talking less, analyzing less, and getting into that right brain state, something else begins to take over. And so our artists are very important. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but
I thank you for that. I really thank you for letting people understand that better. Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I want each of you to take a moment and maybe speak a little bit more to, spread the gospel. Why should we really be thinking about our local artists and going to curatedbythesea.com? Right on the front page of the website, you just scroll down a little ways and there's this big juicy black button and it says donate, and that's for the fund.
Exactly.
And so if each of you could just take a moment, why is it important for us to think about these individual artists here in Santa Cruz? Rose, you've all spoken to it a little bit more, but we are here to really make it come alive so that people are just like compelled to go to curatedbythesea.com.
Thank you.
Click that
and
button.
I do want to add one more logistics question. When you press that button, it links to an organization called Fractured Atlas out of New York City, and they're an arts organization, 501c3, that we've partnered with as our fiscal sponsor. So the direct donations are 100% tax deductible too.
And what is it called? Fractured Atlas?
Fractured Atlas. There's also a link on the website too if you want to learn more about Fractured Atlas. But their whole mission is to support nationally arts communities in doing exactly what they're doing for us, to be that fiscal sponsor to help with the administrative part of working. So we don't have to become a nonprofit.
Right, because that's a whole nother thing. You're busy running a gallery.
Exactly.
It's a whole nother thing.
So they cover us in that way, which
Right.
allows folks to just press the button, donate. They'll get a receipt for tax purposes.
Right. And
so they're there.
And we can
All the
speak to that.
Mm-hmm.
All the better, right? And we can speak to this because I was telling you before we went on the air that I lived in Vienna, Austria. And in Vienna, they charge really nice level of taxes, and they provide many things for the people, right? So if you want to be an artist, it's easier. In the United States, we don't. So if we want to support the arts, it has to happen because each of us individually passionately believes it's important, and we actually need to do it because there's very little available, right?
And in some ways, just thinking about one of the ways to support the artists is to buy their art and live with their art. Because
what an idea.
When you live with their art, you are enriched, and you're enriching the community, you're enriching the artist, etc. And that's different than necessarily giving money to this fund, which is also a wonderful way to give this kind of blanket kind of support.
But that's direct support.
Yes, exactly.
That's
exactly.
right, and that's a beautiful way to have a connection and to the artist. And previously, you could see pieces of art, like I said, in certain shops, in certain restaurants, or you would go in October to open studios, right? Where you could, but now all we have to do is there's the tannery too, but I think a lot of people kind of miss it, right? You have to kind of know and go down there. Now there's this space where, you just wander downtown and just wander into Curated by the Sea, and you can experience many, many local artists and maybe bring one of those beautiful works home.
And Curated by the Sea is different than other galleries in that it represents the artists. which is a very different notion than actually putting on a show.
Tell us more.
So Melissa, actually, you can tell us more about representing artists by actually helping the artists sell their work, which is a really different approach. That's what big galleries in all cities, et cetera, do, is that they have their roster of artists that they're trying to help place pieces of work, and encourage people to search out the rest of the work that artist does, et cetera, et cetera. And to be represented by a gallery is very, very different than to have a show in a gallery. And Melissa can tell us more about that.
Yeah, maybe Melissa can speak to it, and Rose too, because Rose, you were a gallery director. Like, was it the Cabrillo Gallery?
At Cabrillo Gallery.
Yeah. Oh, great.
True.
So
As a program coordinator.
Great. Well, let's hear about this, because I don't really know what Sarah's talking about, and part of the mission of the station is education. So what is Sarah talking about? What does it mean?
So as Sarah was saying, so a museum, a college gallery, and a commercial gallery are very different things with their very different missions. And I'm still really trying to find out, to see the vision for what this gallery and what the community needs from this gallery. But what we've been doing for the last 2 to 3 years is that representation model, where mostly just, as I tell people, when they say, well, what draws you to an artist or a piece of art? And for me, it's pretty emotional. Same thing, where you see an artist's work and you have that visceral feeling, and you're like, oh, I love that work. And then kind of thinking through, is this something that folks would actually buy? And that's another question is, people come in, well, who's buying the art? And there's no, for me yet, after 2 years, and mostly through COVID, there is really no demographic yet. It's all over the place. It's the person looking for a piece for their second home in Pleasure Point, or I live in Walnut Creek and I have a big wall, so I can handle a big piece of art, and I love Santa Cruz, and this reminds me of Santa Cruz. So it's all over the place with that. So sorry, I'm diverging a little bit to who comes in, but back to the representation model, like Sarah was saying. So someone walks in the gallery and sees a piece by Sarah or Rose and says, I'm attracted to this piece of work, and then I know Rose's story and Rose's artwork and what else Sarah has in her studio, the back of her studio, right? And someone can come in and we could talk about that. Like, I'm that face when Rose and Sarah aren't in the gallery. I'm the face of Sarah and Rose, hopefully, and trying to share with that art lover a little bit more about that artist. So, and it's a pretty standard gallery model. There's galleries all over the country that follow this model.
Right. And on your website, you have all the lovely write-up. It was really wonderful checking out the different artists, and the write-ups are excellent. And so, Rose, you were a gallery, did you say director, coordinator?
Yes, at Cabrillo College, and for nearly 20 years. But it's a very different model at a college gallery, where we're looking more to educate rather than to sell the work. And because we're supported by the college, it allows us to do more experimental things, so that the work doesn't have to be something that is typically saleable,
right.
Which, you've got to pay the rent. And people who run a gallery, they have to think in those terms somewhat. I think Melissa has been very broad in the scope of work that she shows, and it's an amazingly eclectic group of work, but she works hard to put it together, and it looks good in there, in that vast space. And the changing exhibitions is an exciting element, so it's always staying fresh and moving, but as a gallery paying the rent, you've got to think in terms of, will this piece sell somewhat? And I think Melissa has been pretty open to, as she likes the work, she puts it in there. And I think of all the times I have fallen in love with a piece of art. I've gone into a gallery or a museum, and I've looked at something and thought, oh, I love that. And walked away and still think about those pieces today.
I can think of the
wish
two
I'd
pieces
bought
that have haunted me my whole life. Yes, I totally understand.
And it's a visceral thing, and I kick myself for those few pieces that I did not buy that I wish I had.
Yeah, and there's nothing like an original piece of art versus a print, that we might buy when we're younger and trying to get stuff on our walls. And there is a lot in the gallery that's well within the range of affordable, and it's gorgeous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Well, that's the tricky part now, is trying to. It's 4,600 square feet, as we've talked about, which is a gift and a curse, because the rent means the rent's very high and it's very big. So how do you get enough work in that folks, when they're coming off the street, just wandering in, see something that's going to hit them, but make it not so it's all too cluttered, so that each piece has a little bit of room to breathe. And then also, with my passion is I do love selling art. I love connecting people with another artist and getting to tell the artist that a piece sold, and that's such a thrill. But I also love, like Rose was saying, the more inspirational work. So it's as much of a personal rush for me when someone comes in and says, Sarah Friedlander's work has moved me to tears, or and I'm like, okay, great. And it's as fulfilling. So how do you balance that? And also, Santa Cruz, the community, we all feel needs and loves that as much as they may need something to hang over their sofa, right? Is that a place to come? And we do have the Ma, and we do have artist studios and Blitzer Gallery and Radius Gallery, so we've got some great places to go and be inspired. But then what about that piece you want to buy and take home? So anyway, what is that vision for the future? How is this a sustainable thing? Because right now, I've been kind of hanging on by my fingernails and finding grants here and getting, how to make this a sustainable place downtown Santa Cruz at 4,600 square feet, because I do love the space.
Well, we're going to talk more about that and more about the Santa Cruz Artists Assistance and Relief Fund right after this break. And also, I think we're going to get into a bit of art as activism and how it changes our world and nourishes our local culture. So we'll be back with more with Melissa Kreisa, Sarah Friedlander, and Rose Sellery right after these messages. Welcome back to Talk of the Bay. I'm Christine Barrington. Well, artists define nearly every culture around the world, more so than any other class of people. People look to artists to help them understand themselves and their existence, and it's no wonder that given all the mysteries in the world, we take solace in the art around us. And solace is what I felt when I visited Curated by the Sea, a relatively new downtown exhibition space opened by artist Melissa Kreisa. Melissa is here with us tonight in the studio, along with fellow artists Sarah Friedlander and Rose Sellery, to talk about the collaborative efforts to grow the Santa Cruz Artists Assistance and Relief Fund, started in 2008 in answer to the critically limited funds available to artists facing emergencies in Santa Cruz County. So, Sarah, you have stated that your work as an arts activist through Santa Cruz's art group, that's ARRT, has solidified your belief in the importance of the arts in preserving our democracy. And so this is a very hot topic, and I'm wondering if you might speak to that.
I might. Yeah, I would say 6 years ago, when things kind of changed radically around our democracy and the potential for our democracy, Myra Eastman and I got together a group of artists in Santa Cruz who were concerned and didn't know exactly what to do with themselves with that concern. And we decided to form this group, Artists Respond and React Together.
Artists Respond and React Together?
Yeah. And we started meeting and trying to find out what we could do, and certainly we could do things around protest marches and design banners, and but then we started doing much more activism. And right now we're working on a project that will interest people, which is that we started doing votive candles that had to do with voting and listing the ways that you could get, kind of ready to vote. And trying to give them or fundraise with those candles to give them to either immigrants who had just gotten their citizenship and needed to learn how to vote for the first time, or young people who are just about to vote for the first time. And so we've been working on that project, and that's a great project. But we've done at least, I would say, 30 projects over the past 6 years that try to get people together. And when you get people together to be creative, they feel like there's purpose. And then if their aim is to either educate people about what the newest need is, on this crazy planet, between, climate crisis and our democracy being about to fall apart, the creative act of getting 15 people together and doing something artistic, either making a Ruth Bader Ginsburg giant puppet to take to parades, or we made mailboxes when we wanted Gavin Newsom's ballots to be mailed. We made gigantic mailboxes that we stood on the street on Ocean Street and told people to get their ballots in the mail as soon as possible. I mean, just the creative mind starts working, and people enjoy that, and they also are reminded that they can be active citizens. And it's worked out really well so far, and we're hoping that we can still be successful with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, active citizens, that's a good way to express activism. It's just taking action. And just hearing you describe the big Ruth Bader Ginsburg puppet or these votive candles, how brilliant is that? I love it. There's a feeling, again, there's this energy in the body, and it's how we feel inside that determines whether we will continue to engage and take actions or whether we decide to retract and hide. And I think a lot of times people retract and hide from the word activism because their options for activism are choices that don't speak to their deeper being. And what I like to tell people is find what speaks to your deeper being. If you're a musician, make music. If you're an artist, make art. Whatever lights you up, do it. And so tonight we are here talking about artists. And I want to pivot to you, Rose. And I read, I believe, on your little write-up at Curated by the Sea, that the primary theme found in your work is human dynamics, the fragility of the family, gender roles, social issues, and the intricacies of our relationships to one another and the mysteries of who we are. And if that doesn't sound pertinent...
That sounds like a lot.
It sounds like a lot. And if that isn't pertinent, I don't know what is, right? Because the problems on this planet have to do with human dynamics, right? And how we relate to each other and how we see things. And
for the most part, I think that's true. And a lot of my work focuses on heartache, and sometimes it comes out in humorous ways, and sometimes it comes out in heartbreaking ways. And people have cried, and people have come to me with their stories after seeing some of the work I've done, which is immensely gratifying. And I'm so grateful for some of the stories that have been told to me based on work that I've put out there. And as an artist, we often work in whatever studio space we've created for ourselves, and generally we're working alone. Though, if you go to one of the AART events with Sarah, you're working in a community and doing something together, which is so enlivening. But most artists work alone, quietly in their space, or with music blasting, but you don't know how it's going to be received when you put it out in the world. So if someone laughs or cries, it's a wonderful thing. Even if somebody just tells you they like your work, it's like, oh, thank you.
Right. It's all about human interaction. So, like talking
is.
about getting together to take action together, it's nourishing. You know, my theory is if what we're doing nourishes us, then we can keep doing it, right? It sustains us, right? And even if you're working alone, eventually that work of art is going to interact with a human being, and that relationship is going to happen, right? It's different, but
And when you put your artwork somewhere, you want to be there with it so you can experience other people experiencing it.
Which is also why it's so great that we have a gallery in town,
Right.
because the work is being seen way more than it had been. And, you know, I've been here since 73. And, and one time there was an attempt to get a big gallery going in Santa Cruz, and it didn't come to pass. And now we've been waiting for years to have a gallery. And it really feels like, wow, you know, people can see our work.
Well, and prior to the '89 earthquake, there were several galleries, but we haven't had that since. And when you think about how many artists there are in Santa Cruz County, it's vast, it's amazing. And to not have an art gallery showing, you know, primarily local people's work is tragic. And why haven't we had that sooner? We had to wait for Melissa.
We had to wait for Melissa Kreisa to
Aw,
land
you're
in
so
Santa
sweet.
Cruz. And so, in case you've just tuned in and you're wondering what we're talking about, we are talking with Melissa Kreisa, who is the founder of. You have partners helping you, right?
In the beginning, I started with a business partner who was great, and then during COVID, she
That's
retired,
right. She
and
pulled
then
out.
So since I've been downtown, it's been solo.
It's solo. It's
Yeah.
you. And so you've created this 4,600 square foot exhibition space
It's right on Front Street.
Next to the mall.
Next to the mall.
next to the mall. How
Across
perfect
from
is that?
Trader Joe's. Go do
Yeah.
your shopping. Go look at art.
Great parking.
And you have this lovely little side space where on First Fridays, maybe more often, you have live music playing. How great is
What
that?
a
Tell us about
gift.
that.
Well, these past two First Fridays, Sarah's husband Cliff is in a fantastic jazz band, and they played for us. And
The name of it is
Stolen Moments.
Stolen Moments.
And but we do have a fun little story of another group that's been playing almost First Friday, and they have in the past referred to themselves as the house band, which makes my heart swell in wonderful ways. So one of the lead, Sal, came into the gallery one day with this cute little family just walking in. They sort of raced around as little kids and were racing out. And he said, "I love what you're doing. I'm in a band. I'm over in San Jose, and we'll play for free." And I was like, "Okay." And he gave me a card. And I was like, well, you know, they were adorable, but really. And so I looked them up, and they're this fabulous improvisational jazz band, 7 people.
Los Improviders.
Los Improviders. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you, Rose.
And I called them up, and I was like, well, I'm doing this on First Fridays. Do you guys want to try it? And they came over, and they filled the alleyway with all of their 7 musicians, and they played and it was right at the beginning when COVID was first starting to dissipate a little bit, when it was that sweet spot about a year ago when we thought it was going to be over. And people were dancing, and everyone was so happy to see the art and the music and live music again. And it was we all were just like, this was a special moment. And so they've played almost every other First Friday since we've been doing it.
Right.
And they're going to be playing for Rose's
Yes.
opening.
Let's talk about that.
They're going to be playing actually next weekend for the closing of Sarah's show on next Saturday from 2 to 4.
So that show is called Still.
Yes.
And
Beautiful
it's been in your gallery this summer. It opened in June. But anyone listening right now, if you're intrigued, this amazing woman, Sarah Friedlander, and want to see her art, you of course can go to her website, sarahfriedlander.com, but you could see it live, which is so much better at this fabulous space.
Thank
and it
you.
will continue to be there through the 10th.
Yes. So we'll be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 12 to 6.
12
We'll be
to
open, yeah.
Thursday, Friday,
And
12.
Sarah's
3 days.
work in that particular exhibition is partnered with Dee Hooker. So the two of them have not only been longtime collaborators on wonderful projects, but the exhibition includes Dee and Sarah's work.
Absolutely.
And they're both very different. There's a little crossover here and there, but they're really quite different and so amazing for any taste is going to say, oh, I love that, or I love that. Oh.
And it's Sarah's husband, Cliff, also built this beautiful exhibition wall. He's a cabinet maker. And so it elevated the entire space. So it's really fun to walk in the front and pick a side and walk around the front of the gallery through Sarah's work, turning into Dee's work. And
right.
It's quite really an experience.
It's really an ecosystem. I mean, there's so many people, there's so many pieces involved to actually bring this into being. It's just gotten birthed. It's a baby. And those of us, who are hearing this tonight, go on down and check it out. And over the years, right, there's music, who knows what's going to evolve. And one of the things that is happening at the studio is you are leading up this effort for this fund. So if people come in, even if you can't necessarily buy a piece of art, look at it, enjoy it, let it touch your soul. You're going to have a great experience going down to Curated by the Sea. And very soon, if you would like to see Rose Sellery's art, when is that exhibition starting? And let's just describe a little bit of what people will experience, because it's pretty exciting. It's pretty rich
exciting.
work. Yeah.
Oh. Well, thank you. The exhibition is called Inside Her, and it goes from September 15th through November 12th. And there's an opening reception on September 25th, a Sunday, from 4 to 6. And it's also open for 2 First Fridays for October and November. But I'm a multimedia artist. I work in lots of different things, and I use the materials that seem essential to creating the piece for me. So one of the pieces in this exhibition is called Inside Her, and it's a corset shape, a sculptural piece, 3-dimensional, hollow on the inside, and the whole interior is lined with thousands and thousands of straight pins. So it's very sharp and pointy, and my granddaughters help me, stick all these pins in. And friends, as I'm doing this in the park and playgrounds, and everyone's trying to stick pins in with me. So that's one of the pieces, and a lot of the pieces have kind of a female centered focus. So there's a pair of boxing gloves that are pink, and they're battered and tattered, and on the label on them is Survivor, and it's spelled SIR to indicate that a woman, doing battle with a man. But I haven't ignored men in my exhibit. So while a lot of the pieces are about females, and as a particular piece that I'm finishing up right now is titled The Secret Life of Hangers. And as we face the loss of abortion rights for all of us, some of us can remember back to the days when hangers were abortion tools, and so it's a really hard piece to create. It's a hard piece for me to think about. I did not have to go through that myself, but I need to talk about it. And for me, that's some of what my art is about. It's a venue for me to talk about things that really move me or hurt or make me laugh. One of the pieces is called Family Jewels, and it's a male penis and testicles, but covered with jewels. And it's got its own little velvet display box. And thinking about all the preciousness that goes with male organs. So that's one of the pieces that came out of that.
Well, I'm thinking of one of the pieces that I saw on your site called Fatal Attraction, but I didn't see the name of it. I was it's these pair of like stiletto beautiful shoes, and around the ankle, there's a little ringlet that goes around the ankle, and it looks like the crown of thorns. And then there's all these spiky things over the strap at the front. And when I looked at that piece, I hadn't seen the title of the piece yet, and I thought, yeah, being a woman sometimes feels like a crucifixion. That's what came to mind when I saw those.
That piece is in the gallery on view right now today.
That piece is in the gallery. Yeah.
Gorgeous.
So people, if you're listening and you want to see the family jewels, you can go to Curated by the Sea near the Ma. Now, we have a few minutes left, and I want to wrap this up because I really got intrigued and inspired about the show because of this relief fund, Sarah. And I'm wondering, are there any stories that you could tell about artists that were helped by the fund?
Without using names, I can
Yes.
I certainly can tell that the last time that we utilized the fund had to do with the fires and the number of studios that had burnt down of artists who weren't insured and couldn't. And so, clearly there were 5 artists that we helped with the fund who are rebuilding their studios right now. And not that we funded the rebuilding, but we helped refund the building. And because the money was coming from Santa Cruz community members and the artists who had contributed, to the scarf wall, etc., it felt like we, Dee and I, were conduits for the community to let the artists know that someone's there, someone cares. And that's one story. I mean, another story is one of our most beloved artists in Santa Cruz suffered a stroke, and the entire community came out to help. Artists, donated for auctions, et cetera, and we could write a check the first week, and help, with the initial response to that. And, and he's doing quite well right now. But
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people have sat across from me in the studio and talked about how incredibly responsive the Santa Cruz community is. And so I just want to give a shout out to all of you community members who have shown up in so many ways for our fellow citizens. There have been a lot of very hard things that have happened in the past few years since this station was born, and consistently the community has come forward. And Melissa, you're one of those community members, and you've come forward to be of service to the artistic community and our greater community, because it just enriches all of us to get to wander downtown anytime we want, wander through the gallery, see these incredible artists, go down on a first Friday. I mean, let's face it, we need celebration.
We need celebration.
We need
Agreed.
celebration. And so you can go, you can see beautiful artwork, you can hear some tremendous music of Los Improvados. Is that?
Improviders.
Los Improviders.
And Stolen Moments.
And Stolen Moments. It's just such a great feeling, to hear music and to be with all these interesting people. And
can I just
yes.
say that for anyone who hasn't been to the gallery, Melissa is very nice. She's low pressure, so it's not
It
like
is low
in
pressure.
some galleries where you walk in and say, okay, let me see your wallet. Melissa is not like that, and you can just walk in and look around and enjoy yourself and enjoy your time in there.
Thank you.
And of course, if you see something, do buy it.
Absolutely.
But there's never any pressure to buy it. So go in, be part of our community just by enjoying the work that's there.
Absolutely. Really important.
And you're all in for such a treat when you see Rose's work. It really is
it,
some of
it
the
really
best
is
work.
true. Rose Celery.
Yeah.
RoseCelery.com.
Thank
If you really want to get introduced before you see it live, you can check out her
Absolutely.
website. I was incredibly intrigued and moved. It's astonishing the level of
Exactly.
creativity and accomplishment that is in this region. One of the artists that you are showing right now really intrigued us because my husband's family owned a pretty iconic shop here called United Cigar. And so he sold. So Sarah, you remember United, and so my husband sold cigarettes from a very young age, and we were looking at this art, and he was like, "Those are like cigarette packages," just for fun. Describe one of this art.
Yeah,
it's so amazing.
Rob Larson is the artist you're talking about, longtime Santa Cruz artist, nationally exhibiting artist, had galleries representation in New York and LA. Both galleries closed down during COVID, unfortunately. But yeah, his work is amazing. It's he walks the train tracks locally and will pick up the cigarette packaging. And it's a meditative practice for him, too. And it's part of the transition from trash to treasure, really, and seeing the beautiful outcome of his work. And when you look at it, his art is a meditation, too, in the way that he organizes the colors and the textures. And it's so meticulous. And you go to his studio, and it's actually almost a spiritual experience to walk into Rob Larson's beautiful studio, white walls, perfectly packaged Marlboro, hundreds of Marlboro cigarette packaging inside this little plastic bag, and
talk about alchemy, huh?
Absolutely,
right?
It really is. So
transforming.
I became aware of his work through Anna Mark's art party, and I had this vision of who this artist must be. This old curmudgeon-y smoker with a raspy voice, and he's the opposite, just
Mr. Meticulous Zen master or
and
something.
So lovely, and very mindful,
right?
And mindful is the art, which makes sense after you see it, and it's really special.
Yeah,
but
you've mentioned a couple of times Ann and Mark's art party, San Jose, which is something that went on for a while over the hill, and COVID, and it's really quite something. And I know we've only got a couple minutes left, but I want to mention it because it kind of has a sort of blood relationship to the gallery.
Absolutely,
and
for all of us here,
for all right.
And Rose and Sarah, long time before I came into the picture.
Right, another person, Anne. Who's a force of nature. She's the first person I met walking into the studio. It was a transformational experience to encounter this being. And I'm like, if we didn't come to this gallery, I never would have met this woman, Anne. And so hopefully that got shut down during COVID. It actually was an art show that started in her home and then expanded to the Santa Cruz Fairgrounds with, fire dancers. And talk about celebration. Hundreds of artists. So
all super high quality, curated by professional curators, Mark Justude and Susan Hill.
Hillhouse.
Yeah. So you get on. Get on the Curated by the Sea list, and if this gets birthed again, people might get to hear about it. And
Glimmer of hope.
Glimmer of hope. And
Mark and Ann on Friday said glimmer of hope that maybe it'll happen again.
We keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, we all would love to see it happen
and ignite
again.
the joy of artistry in the Santa Cruz and San Francisco region. Thank you so much, each of you, Melissa Crisis, Sarah Friedlander, Rose Sellery, for joining us here tonight. Visit Curated by the Sea near the Ma. Enjoy the art, and while you're at it, you can also contribute any amount you want to support the Santa Cruz Artists Assistance and Relief Fund, a very critical lifeline when it matters for our incredible Santa Cruz artists. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Okay, coming up at the top of the hour is Peace Talks, but before that, we will have First Person Singular.